Another option for virtualization is going to be application virtualization. So we're going to go even deeper now. We started out with virtualizing a whole computer. Then we talked about virtualizing just the desktop. But now we can, instead of having an entire desktop virtualized, we can virtualize just a single application with application virtualization. So essentially, each application has its own registry and file system. So you can virtualize to that level within the operating system. So they leave no footprint in the host computer's registry or file system. So what happens is, when you run an application in Windows, there's lots of things that application touches in Windows. It has to use the registry. It has to work, talk to the operating system. It writes temp files. It has things in program files. It uses the environment variables in Windows, for example. All of those things put together, it's registering DLLs and, all the libraries that it has. So there's lots of things that applications do on a computer that they splatter everything all over that computer. So what application virtualization does is it takes all of the components for that application and it sort of moves them to its own sandbox. So it doesn't interfere with anything else on that computer. And not only that, but it can abstract many of the things that application sees so that it may think that it's running on a completely different operating system or a completely different version of Windows and so forth. Some of the products that we have to do that are things like VMware's ThinApp, Microsoft AppV, Altera Software Virtualization Solution, which I'm not familiar with. The other two that I've certainly used. So where would you use these? Let's say you had an application that is a legacy application that your organization requires that only works in Windows XP. And as most of you know, most of us do not run Windows XP in our environments anymore because it's been sunsetted by Microsoft. They no longer do patches. There's lots of good reasons to not run Windows XP. So if we have an application that only runs well on Windows XP, one of the options you have is to try to run it in compatibility mode in a newer version of Windows. That doesn't always work. Sometimes that's a messy solution. So the other solution we have would be to use application virtualization, where the application runs sort of in its own virtual sandbox within that desktop. The nice thing about application virtualization is it's a lot more efficient. If the only reason we need virtualization on a desktop is because we have a legacy application that requires Windows XP, some system administrator says, well, okay, we'll just run a Windows XP VM on everyone's computer. They can turn on that VM to run Windows XP and then run their application within that, which is okay, but that's a lot of extra work and a lot of extra things that have to happen to make that work. Where application virtualization, it's sort of the least common denominator. It only has what you need to run that application. So again, this is a great option for virtualizing legacy applications, and there are certainly other use cases as well for application virtualization, which you can certainly bring up in the discussion board.